Gentlemen, I'm Arun Mukherjee, Senior Director Operations with Broadband India Forum. At the outset, a very warm welcome to the valedictory session of 5G India 2021 from Bharat Exhibitions and Broadband India Forum. A very warm greeting to Mr. Rahul Vats, who is chairing this session, and all the panelists. We are honored to have Shri R.K. Pathak, DDG IC from the Department of Telecommunications as our special guest of honor for the valedictory session. He has advised he would be joining us at 2:30 p.m., but we look forward to his valued words after the panel discussion. We have an esteemed panel of speakers from Marvin Air, VMware, Nokia India, Keysight Technologies, and IIT Hyderabad. It gives me great pleasure to now introduce our session chair, Mr. Rahul Vats. He's the Chief Regulatory Officer at Bharti Airtel Limited and is a telecom veteran since the inception of private participation in India in 1995. With nearly 25 years of experience, Rahul is an expert on telecom licensing, economic regulations, spectrum management, new technologies like M2M and IoT, and regulatory litigation, and firmly believes that regulatory policy should always aim for leveraging benefits for all key stakeholders in the ecosystem. That's consumer, service provider, vendors, and the government. His domain expertise on regulatory and business strategy has been extensively used by various international partners in the past, such as Axiata in Malaysia, Indosat in Indonesia, and Dialog in Sri Lanka. Rahul holds an engineering degree in telecommunications from the University of Pune and is an alumnus of IIM Ahmedabad and the Wharton School of Pennsylvania. Rahul, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Arun, for this introduction. We have a very interesting day today, and we all know the subcontext within which we are there. So we are going to talk about 5G, the ecosystem, how we are developing, what are the challenges, opportunities, which are emerging around us. And we are going to perhaps even look at, how do we actually do the transition to this 5G world? What sort of policies and regulation perhaps we need to look into? What are the popular use cases for 5G? So these are some of the items I think we need to discuss today. We have got a very distinguished panel with us today. Let me first start by introducing the panel to you. So we have got Mr. Kuntal Chaudhary from Mavenir, who is the Senior Vice President and General Manager for AI Analytics Business Unit. Kuntal is responsible for building products and solutions at Mavenir, utilizing cutting-edge big data analytics, AI ML-based applications for network automation, and edge AI applications for 5G enterprise and IoT segments. He is an industry veteran with decades of experience in various roles such as technology development, product management, systems engineering, etc. Prior to joining Mavenir, he played a strategic role at Cisco Systems, where he defined and drove Cisco's mobile internet strategy. In his illustrious career, he has contributed to leading standards organizations such as 3GPP, WireMax, and IETF, amongst others. Welcome, Kuntal, for this panel.
Thank you.
Yeah. We also have Vinod Joseph, who is the technical leader of Asia and Pacific in Japan for VMware. Vinod is a technical leader of Asia Pac and Japan within the service provider and edge BU of VMware. In his current role, Vinod works with large and tier 1 CSPs of the region around key areas of network transformation in pursuit towards 5G adoption. As a technology strategist, his role involves partnering with CXOs and enabling them build and monetize their investments in emerging technologies. Key areas of focus are cloud native architectures for network services, mobile and wireless networks, and distributed systems and applications. Vinod has more than 25 years of industry experience, having been part of Cisco, Juniper, HP Enterprise, and Sienna over a course of his career. As a part of his career, he has been part of the CTO office with customer centricity. He has published he is also published author of 3 books and numerous patents. Welcome, Vinod, to this panel.
Thank you, Rahul. Pleasure to be here.
I'm quite happy now to introduce my next participant, who is Amit. Amit is an old colleague and has been in the system for long. He is head of marketing and corporate affairs for Nokia India. Amit heads the customer marketing and communication for India market at Nokia and is responsible for customer and technology, marketing, branding, communications, industry and government relations, and sustainability, including corporate social responsibility. He has held various roles at Nokia in India as the head of end-to-end solution sales. He led initiatives to position Nokia as an end-to-end solution and technology provider, and to leverage strength of Nokia's entire product and service portfolios. As a CTO, where he was responsible for defining technology strategy, focusing on network evolution, enterprise solutions, end-to-end security, and future technology like cloud, 5G, and IoT. He also has also represented Nokia on topics relating to standardization, spectrum management, regulatory, analyst, and industry engagements as one of the designated SPOC for the company. With over 25 years of professional experience in technology, pre-sales, sales strategy, and regulatory and business management positions, Amit has an in-depth understanding of global and Indian telecommunication market. He has held various technology and leadership roles in organizations like Lucent, Motorola, Huawei, and Nokia. Welcome, Amit, on the panel.
Thank you, Rahul, and looking forward.
Sure. We also have with us Mr. Girish Baliga, who is the marketing manager and for Keysight Technologies. Girish works at Keysight Technologies as marketing manager, leading the marketing efforts in 5G wireless, data-centric infrastructure, high-speed digital and aerospace defense business segments. Girish has more than 2 decades of work experience in various functions spanning from research and development, applications engineering, business development, and marketing. Prior to Keysight, Girish worked as Texas Instruments, Xenix Core EI, National Semiconductor Corporation, and BPL Limited. It is also my proud privilege to introduce Professor Kiran Kuchi, who is a known face in telecommunication standardization discussions. Professor Kuchi, as latest as yesterday, Prime Minister made references of some of the key works Professor Kuchi has undertaken, and I'm very, very proud, Professor Kuchi, that you are also part of this discussion. And I understand that you have a limited time today, but we would definitely be enriched by your presence here. Welcome, Professor Kuchi, in this discussion.
Thank you, Rahul.
Okay, so before I start this discussion, I thought I will just lay down, some context of where we are, and then perhaps we can, transit into the questions. So we all are aware of what has happened over last 18 months, the COVID-19 pandemic, which has had a very profound impact on the health and livelihoods of individuals and communities around the world. I think this time has also shown a silver lining, to people at home, at enterprises, at workplaces, which has been the availability of broadband infrastructure, which has really got tested, and actually the telco industry, the entire ecosystem has come together to be able to provide a service platform for everybody to get connected. So as the world now emerges from the pandemic, connectivity will be the crucial to help economic recovery and also become more resilient against the future shocks, which may still occur. Now, this is likely to come in form of timely access to information and services for populations, enhance productivity and efficiently, utilizing the technologies such as 5G and IoT, as we move forward. Just to give you some numbers, in 2020, mobile technologies and services generated over US $4.4 trillion of economic value. That is nearly 5.1% of GDP globally. This figure is likely to grow to $480 billion by 2025 to nearly $5 trillion as countries increasingly benefit from improvements in productivity and efficiency brought about by the increased take-up of the mobile services. 5G will set the stage for Industry 4.0, with gigabyte experience, with high capacity, edge cloud, and AI ML capability. So what are the issues, as we get into 5G? Let me just try to, flag some of the key things. Policy and regulation, for one, is one key area which we require for accelerated deployment of 5G. Availability of spectrum is a point which has been repeatedly made. Availability on all the bands, we are talking about availability of mid-band, availability in 3.5, and also availability in the lower bands. Similarly, followed by availability, the other question is about how the spectrum is going to be allocated, how soon, what is going to be the pricing aspects, which again, I think is a topic which has been very well covered in the past. And then accompanying it, what sort of backhaul capacities will be available to the players. So these are some of the regulatory topics which are there. In terms of readiness for 5G ecosystem for infrastructure, I think few enablers which we have to look for is devices, which is going to be very, very crucial part of this entire journey. and what sort of capabilities these devices are going to have to support AR and VR applications. We also have to ensure that the devices have support of all spectrum bands and are available at attractive price points. The accompanying aspect is on network densification. How do we densify the network? How do we enable small cells? How do we get faster permissions, etc.? And then, of course, is the use cases which are there, which have to be explored in terms of FWA, cloud gaming, remote infrastructure, AR, VR. And along with this, I think the focus has to remain on SDGs and environment as as we move ahead. As our ecosystem footprint grows, we also should keep eye on environmentally sustainable practices. As we go ahead. Like a lot of people are now powering their data centers through green energy. So this is something which we have to go ahead. I think popular use cases we briefly mentioned about, and these are going to be the cases as of now we see. And more as we go into, ecosystem development, definitely we are going to see a lot of things happening on health, on telemedicine, really coming up in retail, even agriculture and automotives. So with this, background, let me now, try to, start this conversation and take this journey ahead. I think the first part of the discussion, I really want to talk about the socio-economic impact of the 5G. And if I may start with you, Kuntal, given the socio-economic disruption we all have seen due to the unfortunate pandemic and ability of the telecom sector to be able to withstand this, post-COVID-19, how will 5G really speed up the economic and industrial recovery? Some thoughts around that?
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you for this great question, and thanks to all the panelists. I think in post-COVID era, this is the big opportunity lies in digital transformation for India. Digital transformation is taking place around the world, as we know. We are all working in this to make this happen. But for India, I think there is a big opportunity for India to leapfrog and implement something good for all the population. After meeting Prime Minister Modi yesterday, Christian Amon, CEO of Qualcomm, mentioned something that has caught my attention, such as India, he said, could be a fantastic destination for the semiconductor industry, subject to infrastructure availability. What does it mean? That means that India can really be the go-to place for building the next generation for high tech. And what does it mean with respect to infrastructure? Perhaps it meant transportation, shipping, and energy. But one more very important infrastructure that we all are very used to now because of COVID, that this is broadband. We all work from home during COVID, and the infrastructure really stayed intact during this time. So it's a good lesson, but we need to pay attention to now building the infrastructure for the post-COVID era, where we have to expand and seize the opportunity for this transformation. So because of this working from home to stay, the fixed wireless access is one of the key areas to look at from 5G perspective to support this post-COVID expansion. As of now, as of March of this year, the total world broadband population in India is about 22.8 million, growing at a rate of 2.2%. This is an area where we can really focus on applying 5G for providing broadband access to many more homes going forward, because everybody is working from home, and that's a workforce of the future. Broadband at home will be on par with basic utilities. I mean, we need water, we need electricity at home, but broadband is going to be as important going forward for us to really work into the next generation. And this is where the significant opportunity for 5G lies, focusing on fixed wireless access to support the next expansion. The other thing is use of AI. So as of now, we have built networks that are quite resilient, but we have to really do a lot of manual work to manage them. AI should not be an afterthought. I mean, it should be as per how we build a 5G network. That's how AI should come in. 5G is a big enabler of AI. With 5G, with the access and the speed and the low latency of 5G, the AI applications can come in to provide services to do the expansion that India is looking for, such as using computer vision for industrial sector. If we really have to have manufacturing attracted to this country, then we need to look at smart manufacturing. How do you implement the critical infrastructure in India using computer vision and other AI technologies? The industrial IoT sector and analytics of it is another foundation for it. So that can be applied over 5G technologies. 5G is an enabler, as I mentioned. This will increase productivity significantly, reduce downtime for any manufacturing activity, better supply chain management, because we all are experiencing shortage of components around the world. If we apply AI to do supply chain management and inventory management, those are the areas where we can really improve using AI and 5G, smarter asset tracking and smarter logistics. Besides that, the nature of work going forward, because everybody's remote, we really have to have immersive way of collaborating with each other. For example, designing in the hardware industry is very different than designing in the software industry. So we really need to have applications like AR, VR pickup to enable this workforce where the designers could be in different cities, different parts of India, where they can participate in the same hardware design. But there are plethora of other areas where AI and 5G can really propel India to the next generation. And big area of for us to look at is agriculture, how we implement smart agriculture across farming, big area as well. Various things that you can do with AI and 5G, healthcare, logistics, energy efficiency, and improved grid. I mean, as just looking at agriculture, if you think of agriculture as agriculture 2.0, there are we can do soil and crop monitoring, farming, livestock inspection, drones. We can use drones using 5G technology and AI to improve performance and efficiency. So post-COVID era, it's a big opportunity for India to implement everything smart, especially in upcoming sectors such as manufacturing and domestic R&D. So I would say that this opens up a very nice opportunity for India to leapfrog, and 5G is a big enabler to push this to make this happen.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Mantula. Thank you for such a optimistic outlook, and I'm sure the industry and the ecosystem is gearing up to be able to do that. We know that, and let me come to Professor Kuchi now for his comments. That 5G is arguably an ecosystem where various stakeholders have to play their part, and mostly now for a lot of nations around the world, it is becoming a priority. So my question to you, sir, is how can the scientists, the policymakers, regulators, and industries, how do we come together to maximize this potential of 5G? And how do we tackle some of the biggest growth challenges which we are facing today? That's what I want to ask you.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you for having me here. So I want to just give you some basic perspective on where we started, and then come back to answer your question.
Sure.
Operators have done a commendable job of providing cellular connectivity in India. There's no doubt about it. But what has been lacking is that indigenous development of products in telecom, not just in telecom, actually anywhere, I mean, if I just look around my room, I can't just possibly find one. I would call a resistor or a capacitor is also important today in my electrical engineering course. So what we have done is, at least in the telecom space, we had addressed several aspects. The first one is having an entry into standards, having the deep know-how of how standards are made, created, and what sort of contributions we can make. I think around 2015-16 is the time frame when I went to 3GPP. I was probably alone at the time. That was the time 5G was just getting talked about. Narrowband IoT was the first stab into 5G that was specified. And then 5G study item came, and now we have 3 releases of 5G. So I went to the standards bodies and started making small contributions. Okay, so right now there are about 5-6 entities regularly contributing to 5G standards from India, maybe 10 people. So that's a minuscule amount, number of people. So based on the work and the track record that we then the small successes we achieved, the government has launched a new project and try to scale the manpower. Now we have a new effort to take this 5-10 people to 100 people, 5-6 entities to maybe 20 entities, something like that. We already embarked on this new project. So maybe 5 years from now, you will see a lot more impact the Indian entities making in the global standards definition. The second is the products, telecom products by themselves. I would say that probably 2020 is when a serious attempt is being made at a policy level to talk about developing these products made in India. It's going to take quite some time. I would say that a few more years before India starts developing products on its own, and start deploying it on a very, very large scale. But I think the intent is there. I mean, the intent is there at all levels, from the highest levels in the government, that they want to make a deeper impact. In fact, I've been holding many discussions with the ministries. They're specifically talking about how can India be a player in the telecom, electronics manufacturing, not just assembling phones, but how do we build chipsets and associate electronics on the device side. I don't know if any of you know, based on this 5G test bed project that DoD has given us, we recently have taped out a narrowband IoT SoC, the system on chip. We are going to take it to production next year. The first prototype is fairly successful. We're doing, we're going to get into operator trials soon. This is probably the first time, an SoC of cellular grade has even been attempted. This I would call, the low-hanging fruit. NB-IoT is an afterthought for many people, but at least we now know how to make a SoC. And I could see that there are quite a number of low bit rate applications that this SoC can probably address. Then the ministries are talking, are holding this case. How can we do, a bigger SoC, not only for handsets, but not necessarily for handset, but IoT in general. So this deep appetite exists. Now I'll come back to how industry operators and academia and the government can work together. Actually, good or bad, 5G standards, all the noise that has been made on 5G and 5GI, it has done one positive thing though. That is, it brought all the people together. Okay, so there was never a case in the last 10-15 years, academia, industry, domestic industry, startups, operators, regulators never sat in one room and discussed anything. Okay, so the first positive impact is that it got everybody together. So that's a start, I would say. Now this start, I think, has been made. I'm pretty sure that a lot more can be done. I think 5G is three releases of 5G has been made. It's only about product definition. Now 6G is about 10 years away, and the government has already given a few projects to us. We started working on 6G, starting with convergence between satellites and terrestrial, and all the way to 6G requirement definition. We're already addressing these issues. We're doing some prototypes of both on satellite space and a very super high data rate, 100 gigabits per second 6G space. So in a 6G timeline, I think that the Indian operators, the multinationals operating in India and the academia and the domestic industry and startups will have to work together. It's imperative that they have to work together, because the reason is simple. India has this deep appetite to be a player. And once the appetite has been shown, and it's been made amply clear by what the Prime Minister has said, the recent trip or elsewhere. So these entities will have to get together and make a 6G definition. Okay, that's a long way to go, but 5-6 years will pass, in a blink. But as far as 5G is concerned, many of you know that the many Indian entities are targeting their own product definition. Happily, based on the funding that we received, we have already made prototypes of massive MIMO. We have a working base station running at 10 gigabits per second, fully indigenously developed. We have a UV stack. We have built relays in millimeter wave and sub-6. This technology is available for licensing for anybody, whether it's indigenous or whether it is operator. I know that operators have a lot of appetite for building their own products. We will be happy to contribute. We have developed this know-how, developed in the 5G test beds. The testbed project is more or less, it's completed project. But I can tell you that if you come to IIT Hyderabad, you will see hundreds of people developing these, mostly at product-grade solutions. We'll be happy to work with, the stakeholders in this space. I will leave it at this, and then maybe, I'll take some questions later on. Thank you. So my apologies, there is some construction going on. IIT Hyderabad is always expanding. So.
Thank you, Professor Kuchi. That was really. You see, the one thing what separates us in this 5G journey is that the amount of involvement we are now having, and the support we are now getting from the academia, particularly the tremendous amount of work which you just highlighted. I think that is what is going to differentiate us, as we now start going, in the future. And I'm sure a lot of opportunities are available and will be utilized by the industry to be really able to take us to the next level. Thank you. As I highlighted, in my context setting, the focus of the industry now is also on environmentally sustainable solutions, and SDGs cannot be lost sight of. Given the status which is there on digital and rural divide, Amit, if I may ask you this, what role can 5G and future connectivity technologies play in meeting the UN 2030 Sustainable Development Goals?
Thank you, Rahul. And I like the optimism of Professor Kuchi, and absolutely bang on. This is the first time in my interactions in the last 1 year where there has been a collaboration in some sort. A disagreement, yes, but at the same time, a lot of collaboration and an understanding of where the other party comes from. So I think that's a really positive step. Having said that, coming to the question itself, the UN SDG, for the audience, I might just clarify that United Nations Sustainability Development Goals made a common framework with 17 goals. And actually, if you look at all the 17 goals, there is some contribution that 5G can have. But I will not go into 17 because I'll take the whole meeting to just discuss those. I will pick up just 3 of them, which are very relevant to today's scenario as to how 5G can contribute. Goal 8, which is decent work and economic growth. Goal 9, which is industry, innovation, and infrastructure. And goal 13, which is climate action. And I'll just briefly talk about all 3. So when we talk about decent work and economic growth, I mean, Rahul, you already talked about 5 trillion economy being created by 2025. I have another estimate with me, which says 13.2 trillion by 2035. So the number is huge. So there is absolutely no disagreement that huge economic value is going to get created because of the emergence and coming of 5G. And the good thing about this is that this is coming from the existing areas or businesses where automation, industrialization, and things like artificial intelligence will make further efficiency and create this additional economic value. But also a lot of new kind of businesses will emerge. And that is, I think, what is going to create the future of creating new economic value for that. Coming to decent work, we all know last 1.5 years, work from home, hybrid working, these have become known topics. I'll talk to you about Nokia itself. From 1st January, we have taken a decision that going forward forever, we are going to have at least 2 days of work from home for all the employees. So hybrid working is the norm for the future. And when the whole world is adapting to a different way of working, I think what you require for this different way of working, for decent working, is 3 things: connectivity, automation, and you need the tools and the applications that sit on top. Today, when I'm sitting at home, I need a robust connectivity. I need something to work with low latency so that I can see maybe high resolution. I can do online, I can do video, I can do maybe virtual in the future. And I need the automation. And if you look at all these 3, 5G is going to be a key trigger point for enabling the work for the future and making life simpler. In fact, in Nokia, we always say that 5G, one of the things that 5G is going to do is solve human problems and make life better. So it is not about just creating an economy, but it is also making life better. Coming to the other goal, which is industry innovation and infra, we talk about industry 4.0 in the same breath when we talk about 5G. All of us are doing that right now. So I think there also, what 5G is going to do is it's going to break the divide between the what we used to call the digital industries and the physical industries, because digital industries means like banking and e-commerce, etc., which are already digitalized, and physical industries are the manufacturings of the world, the power, the mining, industries such as that, which have lagged behind. And I think that is going to get bridged to a large extent with solutions like Industry 4.0, etc. I'll give you our own Chennai example. In our factory in Chennai here in India, we have partnered with Airtel and set up the first Industry 4.0 running factory right now on a 4G network. And we have not even got 5G there. And even while running that on a 4G network, I can tell you in the last 1 year since we've been running, there is a huge, and I have a full presentation if somebody would like to do that, of seeing how efficiency has increased in that factory. So there is a lot that can be done in terms of creating the infra of the future with 5G, which was goal 9. And then the third goal I would like to talk about is climate. Now on climate, if you see where we are basically, there is the Paris Agreement. Yeah, the Paris Agreement actually set a goal. It said the temperature, the global warming should be within the range of 1.5 degrees and 7.56% reduction should be in emission norms. And our study shows, which we have done, that 4% reduction in emission norms can be only achieved out of artificial intelligence, which is applied to industries. And to achieve and get to artificial intelligence, again, 5G is the core. Now, even if you look at global carbon footprint, we had a research I remember we had done with Telefonica, which said that the energy consumption on a per bit basis or per unit basis, what 5G can achieve can be probably 90% lower than what current technology is. So 5G as a technology per bit will consume much lesser energy. So it will be more climate efficient. And then the last point is that, when we are talking from work from home, we are talking about automation, we are talking about digital twins, we are talking about, remote site management. All this, if you think about it, is going to reduce the number of trips that you take to do a physical job. If I'm staying in home at 2 days, in a week and not going to office, I'm not using my car. So in effect, it also has an impact on reducing the carbon footprint for the world because the whole world is changing. So I would leave it at that as saying that, all the 17 goals, but definitely these 3 of the, United Nations are extremely, extremely important and can be impacted by 5G.
Thank you, Amit. That was really enlightening. The advantage of technology as we move ahead is to see that we really start making a lot of difference to the society. And I think this insight is really, really very useful, as we go ahead. Let me change the tax slightly now. And given that 5G is almost a step change over previous generations of networks, and the ability to address, even hitherto unknown innovative cases, also given the promise and ability to say network slicing, various enterprise grade needs, Vinod, what policy changes would be required to leverage the benefits of 5G capabilities, which can really provide a differential QoS to different users? And also, would this trigger, any relook on the net neutrality policy?
Yeah, thanks for that. That's a great question, actually, Rahul. I think all of the panelists have covered a lot of, the benefits of 5G and what really 5G brings to the table. I think what I would say is that 5G definitely is going to be an evolving space, right? So there are multiple use cases that have been spoken about, industrial automation, industrial 4.0, or anything around private 5G connectivity that will help. But I think what we need to be very sure of is, before we get there and full-fledgedly adopt 5G, there is also certain steps that you have to take before you get there. And that means that you have to gear up your infrastructure to be ready for mass scale adoption, right? This is highly going to be, it's mass scale, and at the same token, you're talking about a highly distributed environment where you want to have applications like AR, VR, or anything around, analytics that is going to be done at the edge and so on and so forth. So I think some of the conversations that we've been having with telcos world over is, in order to get to there and to see the full benefits of 5G, do we have adequate fiberization, right? How much of coverage in terms of fiber do we have really? Backhaul in terms of access and so on. That's the first thing. The second thing is 5G is massively based on what we call as a service-based architecture. So this is largely based on cloud-native principles or agile software principles, as we call it. So in order to deploy this at scale, you're going to talk about an environment that is highly automated, which is manageable by itself. So you're talking about things like self-driven networks and autonomous networks similar to self-driven cars and other applications that we talk about. So how efficient is your network to adapt to this particular scale? And automation becomes a very, very key piece here as well. The third part is, I think even when we are talking about LTE, the question we need to ask ourselves are, have we embraced all of the benefits that 4G could provide? Because we still have a lot of numerous deployments around private LTE, for instance, around industrial automation or around anything that is around massive IoT communication as well. So private LTE is not a bad choice. I'm not saying 5G is bad, but I'm saying, have we exhausted all the options available right now? So many of our customers today are looking at alternates as well to leverage the benefits of providing digitization, not just for the consumers, but even for the rural sectors and so on. And one area that we see, one technology building block that really helps here is open source. O-RAN comes to mind. O-RAN today is the biggest theme that we are talking about, because that is the centerpiece of innovation today, where you disaggregate the most expensive proprietary deployment that telcos really have today and actually build that ecosystem. What I see as a potential for the Indian market today is, O-RAN is not an easy game. It's going to take a lot of effort to put together this ecosystem and build new use cases, because as you look at it, every industry is very unique in terms of what they want, right? You would have an automotive industry who says, I need certain innovation and features and capabilities versus, let's say, healthcare. These are very distinct applications. So how do I put together something that is relevant for all these industries? I think that's where the system integration capabilities come. I think that's an area where India is strongly positioned to make the maximum benefit of a technology such as O-RAN. How do I actually put all of these different artifacts together, build an ecosystem of diverse vendors, and provide a cost-optimized alternate? Of course, it has its own performance and operational benefits as well that come with O-RAN, but I think primarily this is the cost benefits that you see. I think that's another thing that we would like to see SIs and partners, getting incentivized to actually broaden this ecosystem and actually build that and make it a reality for a nation such as India. The other aspect which I would like to touch upon is, when we talk about AI, right? I mean, this is an interesting conversation because what happens is you cannot lift and shift an AI toolkit or an AI training model for any application or any use case. I mean, this has to be custom built. It has to be very oriented to the particular use case, application, and industry that we're talking about. That brings to the equation another conversation, which is around how am I insensitivizing my indigenous and local talent pool to build software, right? To build different applications. For instance, am I insensitivizing my software development pool or my academia to actually build software for different industries that will benefit from the deployment of 5G? That's going to be a key use case. I mean, some of our partners, as an example, some of our partners in South Korea have a program that actually is insensitivizing academias and new college grads to build applications for 5G or mobile edge compute, as you call it. I think that's a space that we also really need to tap in because that automatically brings a set of requirements and capabilities that would supplement that in the form of AI. Because you're going to spend a lot of time bringing in, generic AI capabilities into an ecosystem and spend the next year building that very specific to what the application or ecosystem needs. So I think that's an area that we also need to kind of focus on. The other observation that I have is specifically when you talk about 5G here, I think there are different options, right? I mean, you're talking about, like you mentioned, the low band, mid band, and high band, and so on and so forth. I think we need to make a start. I think the start is very important. And we've seen in some countries that people have just started deploying the mid band because it provides the immediate use cases around enhanced mobile broadband, and immediately that provides opportunities around private 5G or enterprise 5G as well, because you have better speeds. The software architecture and systems that come along with that are much better and sophisticated. And at the same token, they're really playing the wait and watch game before they start deploying more advanced and I would say challenging aspects such as network slicing, because release 17 from 3GPP is not yet there. I mean, it's being ratified as we speak. I think most of the vendors today don't have a comprehensive solution for network slicing. It's all being tested at this point in time. So I would sort of say you need to make the start. You need to make sure that your access infrastructure, your backhauls are being actually densified through fiberization. You're looking at deploying open source equivalents. You're also need to invest in areas where you have more ORAN trials for different industry verticals. Because as part of COVID, apart from the common man, the industries have taken the beating at large, right? I mean, whether it's healthcare, whether it's enterprises or any sector, you name it. So how do I actually start looking at, cost optimized, readily available, more open architectures to actually start this deployment? And I think that's where the ecosystem, the open ecosystem plays a role there. Some of my conversations with our customers, I mean, I've kind of recommended that, one of the things we need to do when you bring out or release RFPs is to make sure that any vendor or every vendor that is participating is aligning to the open source standards and the open source ethos. That is very, very important for the 5G deployment. I think that's really going to be the defining moment as to how 5G can scale. Because trying to do what we did in 4G for 5G is going to be a costly mistake in terms of not just the CapEx, but also the complexity in operations, automation, and management that come along with that. I think that's another aspect that I would highlight. Last but not the least, I think what the Indian government is doing specifically in building certain 5G specific use cases, which are localized, is a great thing. I think this is extremely important because what happens is you're now talking about using alternate technologies to extend rural connectivity and provide coverage at a larger scale. There could be some challenges in terms of how that would readily interoperate with, let's say, 3GPP standards, but I think that's a great initiative. That's exactly what we need to see as a nation progresses in adopting something as large as 5G. That I think would be my few points on that.
Thank you. That was very comprehensive view and really get a good insight as to how we really take up this next part of our journey. So before I come to you, Girish, given that Professor Kuchi has to make an early exit because of his prior engagement, Professor Kuchi, if I can bring you back to the application part now, and it's really insightful. I really want to hear you on this. For 5G business cases to take off, what will be the one killer application that is going to really propel the uptake of 5G? And I just want to listen to you as a student here.
Yeah.
That is something.
My apologies for the background noise. I couldn't control it. But if I knew what the killer application would be, I would be very, very rich. I would bet on my money on that. And I am in no position to, speculate on killer applications, but I cannot claim to be an expert on that. But I can tell you a few things that I understand. I work very closely with public institutions. That's what I have done last 10 years, fairly close to government and local bodies. I've learned a few things. One is electricity, water are very important services, right? And reliable internet access for every citizen should be a right, like water and energy. So today we are very, very, very far from calling this reliable internet access a fundamental right. So if you have to reach that, you have to first solve the problem of EMBB, enhanced mobile broadband, massively deployed everywhere and reach every citizen. So my gut feeling is that the 100 megahertz of, let's say 90 megahertz per operator that if you end up getting the 3.5 gig spectrum, it might just fulfill that goal at best. But I don't believe that URLLC, is anywhere, close to being a reality in the next 5 years in India. But there must be a lot of appetite. But this spectrum, I really doubt it can serve URLLC because you need a private network. So there is no spectrum policy today being talked about how to enable industries to operate efficiently. But where is the spectrum for that? I think that requires a separate discussion. And when it comes to low bit rate applications, narrowband IoT and CAT-M1, it's unfortunate that they're not yet launched in India on a wide scale. And I can tell you that the amount of money that the government has announced for energy meters, it's staggering. But there's no network. They're still talking about 2G, 3G. Finally, in city of Hyderabad, 4 years ago or 5 years ago, I helped them deploy a tender for 800 crores. This is done by the city of the police commissioner. Now, at the time, 800 crores spent on cameras. So I would, if I have to bet my money on it, huge public procurement, cameras using EMBB service, the 90 megahertz you're going to get, that will be the driver apart from people using it. Then it should go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor. I really do tend to agree with you that I think that has to be most likely the first leap which we take. Availability of reliable internet and immediate application to power it. I think that really will take us to the next phase of our growth. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let me come back to you, Girish. We know the Internet of Things and billions of connected devices will enable new opportunities and experiences for customers. The 5G era will take us further into big data, IoT, AI, and power of networks as platforms. What do you foresee the role of 5G in this spread of IoT, and where we are going to have an interconnected digital and physical environment seamlessly intertwined into one? Girish.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So specifically talking about 5G and IoT, 5G will be supporting low latency and high throughput, specifically when you're talking about IoT services for consumers. As we know that the Internet of Things market is rapidly developing and expanding. So with the 5G and the subsequent increase in the cellular bandwidth by gargantuan amounts, it would make it easier for Internet of Things to network a large number of devices together. And specifically talking about the role of IoT with 5G, and what specifically would happen is the closer proximity and the higher bandwidth which 5G cells will alter the way we are currently using near field communications and also the Internet of Things. There are already talks about massive IoT and so on with 5G, but it is work in progress. today, if you're specifically talking about a typical use case examples which we can envisage in the near future would be having several small cells, probably in a store or a shopping mall, that can give some kind of a real-time cloud-based augmented reality to customers. That's one foreseeable kind of killer app, if you can call it so. And moving forward, deploying home internet services will definitely change. As we know, instead of all the wireline and wires dangling everywhere in an apartment complex, so fiber will run to rooftop cells, and that would provide high speed and low latency access to all its occupants. And then the last mile connectivity would definitely take care of the host of IoT devices, which would sit at home. So with all these kind of exciting possibilities which are possible with 5G wireless networks, there will be a host of applications which will significantly enhance the capabilities of 5G IoT-like kind of services. And like I said, there is a lot of buzz around having massive IoT with 5G, and that would kind of have enhanced applications like we are already seeing like traffic management by having a support of massive number of IoT connections, say to traffic lights or cameras and traffic sensors. And like Professor mentioned, the smart meters as well as gas meters and so on, right, are typically the kind of applications which will take wings with the 5G because of its obvious advantages. And obviously the last mile will be through IoT sensors and connections. And that's going to be, with this, the possibilities are going to be very immense. And we are also looking at a lot of traction that's going to happen in the areas of e-health, specifically with wearables and the IoT gadgets, IoT-enabled gadgets. And obviously, there's going to be a quantum leap in asset tracking and with respect to the smart city, smart home, environmental monitoring, and so on and so forth. And smart manufacturing with Industry 4.0 is also going to play a very, very big role. So typically, these are some of the areas which IoT with the 5G is going to make a big dent. And typically, like the other folks on the panel mentioned, another big area will be, which is taking shape, is called critical IoT, which is kind of a paradigm shift, which is coming up from the eMBB connectivity, where the data rate is going to get maximized without any guarantee on latency. So net, what's going to happen is with 5G, IoT is going to see the light of the day, and it's going to be pretty commonplace in a host of applications, and there's a lot of business to be made. Thank you.
Thank you, Girish, for this insight. I agree that we are heading towards IoT explosion, and the number of devices which are going to be available is going to, and the applications to power them, it's really going to take us to the next frontier. Coming to brass tacks, no technology can work if infrastructure is deficient. And telecom has benefited and enabled a lot of solutions because it reached billions of people and masses through coverage and capacity. 5G would be no different. Kuntal, if I may ask you, what are your views on readiness of our current digital infrastructure for mass deployment of 5G? And what aspects do you think we need to shore up on?
Thank you, Rahul. It's a great question. Let's first begin by understanding what we have done. So I think so far, a lot of discussion has happened to understand what's 5G about. It's about intelligent connectivity. That's the realization, and what pillars support that, such as 5G itself. We all mentioned eMBB, URLC services, all these unique aspects of 5G. AI is another pillar. Smart platform, where the platform is autonomous and it takes care of many things that we do manually today. And of course, IoT. So these are the pillars of 5G connectivity, intelligent connectivity. So that's the understanding. There's also a lot of discussions and vision setting has happened, such as the National Digital Communications Policy Vision, which talks about connect India, propel India, and secure India. So these are the groundwork that has happened for all of us to understand what's objective, why 5G. But one area that we need to also look at, which has not happened yet, is the services area. So current policy that we talk about is mostly focused on connectivity, how we provide connectivity using 5G. But rollout of services is as important as well. And these services are new, actually touches upon the existing way of processes that we execute, but in a smarter way using 5G. That also requires policy discussions and debate, because that's very important for us to actually realize the benefit of 5G. Now, talking about preparedness of what we have done so far to be ready for 5G. We are doing investment in R&D, domestic R&D to implement IP for 5G, participate in standards, as Professor Kuchi was telling that India is really stepping up, participating in CGBP and other standards bodies and defining its own use cases, which is what's happening, which is extremely important. India has a very unique network, right? The broadband is mostly mobile broadband. The fixed broadband is much more subdued because of the dominance of mobile broadband. So mobile broadband as a foundation requires very specific thinking. Oftentimes, the standards bodies that are worldwide, they don't really look at local use cases. So India is stepping up to really create this own vision and standard changes are what was a foundational, which is actually happening now. The other thing is that the government has allowed trials. So the incremental trials, incrementally improving the 4G footprint with 5G trials to prove and validate some of the promises and assumptions of how 5G can be deployed is what's happening, which is a fantastic groundwork. Of course, we are looking for the real spectrum option and 5G rollout by next year. But the learnings that you're gathering from these trials are extremely important. Also, DOT and TRAI actually working on spectrum management framework so that we can get the right spectrum, right time at right price. So that's also happening as a foundational work. The other challenges that are being addressed is the accessibility to the towers to lay fiber. Fiber addition, as you all talked about, is extremely important to really roll out 5G for the masses. 5G cannot be just just in small cities and some areas, because it has to be really beneficial for the whole country. So right of way, streamlining that regulation between the government and the state bodies is extremely important. There's some roadblocks there that we need to address, but there's a lot of work that's happened there. And other thing that is also very good that's happening is that this inclusive business environment where not only the big players can play in 5G, but also small players such as startups. Startups are going to be a big part of how we innovate going forward. And this environment, this investment environment, this environment opportunity that India is actually working on, between government and private sector and the academia is going to be extremely important to be ready for 5G, which is what's happening. Now let me talk about, you said the areas where we need to shore up, which is great to discuss. We have to be ready with the fiber to the sites. As of now, approximately about 470,000 sites, towers exist in India in 4G. Out of that, 30% has fiber. Unless there's fiber to the existing sites, deployment of 5G will be difficult. But I'm not saying that fiber is absolutely essential. There's also microwave technology that can be applied as well. But we need to really look at the transport aspect of fronthaul and backhaul to these towers. The 5G will require densification. So that means we need to really add more sites. Around, at least 100,000 sites to be added to really realize some of the benefits of 5G. So that means we have to really look at how do you densify and how do you implement the sites at a much faster pace. The other challenges, the financial health of the sector is not very good. If the sector itself is has this lingering question about its sustainability, it's very hard to raise capital to invest in 5G infrastructure build-up. So that area needs to be addressed by both the private sector becoming more efficient using technology, as well as government offering oversight and proper policy to support this. So the other thing is the selection of the equipment. There was a mention of 4G. If we just build the 5G in the same way as 4G, there will be some challenges. So no matter what type of equipment is selected, I would say that programmable equipment system selection is going to be very important, because the pace of innovation going forward is going to be very, very rapid. And if the infrastructure is not ready to be programmed dynamically, then many things will just be very, very costly and will not be able to support this kind of rapid innovation. And AI/ML should be integral part of 5G rollout. Should not be like an afterthought. So that's another area we need to really shore up. Regulatory fixes, as I said, streamlining improve the ROW deployment regulations, adopting long-term perspective of the benefit of 5G for the whole country. So having the spectrum allocation and more modest reserve for the licenses for the spectrum is going to be very, very important. The key spectrum should be made available. Already we're talking about low band, mid band, and high band spectrums, but this spectrum should be in adequate numbers and available to the operators on time. And supportive investment environment, which is proper taxation policies where the operators can really procure the spectrum at the price that is fair, and at the same time have a business model that justifies investment. Otherwise, there'll be a lot of issues about actually rolling out 5G. I go back to the time when 3G was rolled out in Europe. This kind of regulatory support was not there. 3G was a disaster for Europe. So 5G without this regulatory support and proper modest pricing of spectrum and taxation policies will be very difficult. So those are the challenges, of course, we need to address. Last but not least, I would like to mention that the transport challenge is going to be huge because 5G demands a lot. The promise is huge, and it's also for the masses. That means we need to really see the quality of transport that we are going to provide to the cell sites, not only the existing cell sites, but also the new cell sites. Besides the transport quality, not the bandwidth only, but also time synchronization, for example, because 5G is primarily TDD based, FR1 and FR2. So TDD is not very forgiving with respect to time sync loss. So having the transport that can provide good time sync is also very important. The huge bandwidth requirement, if 5G is deployed in a more centralized and cloud-ran way, the bandwidth and transport quality requirement will be extremely high. So we have to be careful about what transport we're going to lay out so that it can support all types of deployment. Centralized deployment has a lot of benefits, but the transport has to be there to support it. So, so the investment required to upgrade this transport is going to be very high. So we have to be all aware of these challenges. And to ease the requirement for this transport, government should also allow new bands for this transport, such as V and E band, that are used worldwide but not used in India. Without those in place, that we can have a number of choices, not just laying fiber to the sites. There'll be a lot of challenges to roll out 5G for the masses.
Thank you, Kuntal. Very, very detailed. I completely agree on the densification part, on the transportation part, and also on the health of the operators and the ecosystem. Very important. We have seen the government taking some, seminal steps in this regard, and I hope that streak is going to continue further. Now, before I turn to the interesting topics on spectrum and devices, I thought I'll briefly take a small interlude into what, as per GSMA intelligence, is really gaining traction, which is the FWA. 5G FWA is really gaining momentum, and there are already around 63 operators who have already launched the 5G FWA services, while another 18 have announced plans to launch it. As per the surveys which have been available, 52% of consumers actually see home broadband via 5G as a very appealing proposition, a greater share than any other use case which we have been talking about. So Girish, let me come back to you. Given the challenges which India faces, where we are fiber starved, also at the same time we need to connect billions of devices and deliver consumer expectations. How do we see the FWA potential in India?
Yeah, well, with respect to the FWA piece, it's kind of gaining traction across the world, even though in terms of the number of subscribers, it's still relatively few. Industry mobility reports, which we keep gathering from time to time, mention that around 25% of the total network mobile data in 2025-26 will be generated by FWA. But in terms of the absolute numbers per se, it's considerably smaller than the number of smartphones, because as is very obvious, they sell much more, and they sell by the number of individuals. That being said, in addition, the industry leading vendors are collaborating so that they enable a wide array of use cases, including the FWA 5G, which is primarily designed to deliver broadband connectivity at gigabit speed to homes and businesses. So the kind of collaboration which will also aim and it will allow a faster rollout of broadband services in a cost-effective and expeditious manner across India for last mile connectivity challenges which are there. But there's been a host of collaborations happening, and specifically talking about my employer, Keysight, we have tied up with the academia as well as to develop the next generation last mile connectivity related aspects, and these are kind of addressed. So typically, coming back to the point of the use cases of 5G in India for FW, I mean, this would be the traditional consumer segment enterprises, and there is money to be made at both places. So specifically, once the spectrum piece kind of gets chugging, right? So FWA is also going to be a big game changer with the 5G. And it would also address the limited fixed broadband penetration levels in India, and also enhance the data experience on the move. And obviously, yeah, the long story short is that there is fiberification and also a kind of it's kind of starving on fiber, but this is kind of history, because today, as you can see, there's a lot of money which has been invested by the mobile service operators into this aspect, and they see this is for the long haul. And there's a lot of emphasis on fiberification as well. So in summary, with the 5G, FW is going to play a very, very big role for the aforementioned reasons which I spoke, and it's not going to be also RAN as well. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Girish, for this insight. Really helpful. I'm sure FWA is going to lead the pack in the country also. Before I go further, let me welcome Mr. R.K. Pathak, who has joined this meeting. Mr. Pathak is a known face in the industry. In fact, let me say he is the person who is responsible for the current 5G trials. Not only 5G trials, but even giving the opportunity to the industry to be able to test out this technology. Mr. Pathak has played a very long and stellar role in the entire ecosystem, and has been leading the industry efforts and the government efforts for last more than a decade. Welcome, Mr. Pathak, and we look forward to your comments. I understand you are traveling, but it's really a privilege to have you, out here. I think you're on mute, Mr. Pathak.
Thank you, Mr. Rahul. Thanks for your kind words. Am I audible now?
Yes, you are audible, sir.
So I'm in the car, so maybe slight connectivity issue, but that's why we are looking for the 5G.
Absolutely.
So very good afternoon to all of you, and this esteemed panelists. I know that they might have given all the answer of your questions as a panelist, because transition, why 5G is important, or most popular use case of 5G, I don't know. It's still we are searching, because that's why operator will invest depend on what is the, do we have any killer application. So, but let me share my perspective that I would like to thank BIF and Bharat Exhibition for attending this 5G India 2021. If I remember correctly, then its first edition was held in Mumbai in 2018. And that was the time when we first time gave permission for technology trials. So let me say that in India, we gave the permission for the event trial of technology in 2018 itself for demonstration. I remember even 5G testbed was showcased along with other participants, but at that time 5G was not so mature. But it was the BIF who did this first event in Mumbai. Subsequently, we have gone ahead a lot, and then high level forum, they came up with a report making 5G India, making India 5G ready. Under the making India 5G ready, very important recommendations have been making available the spectrum, because we should have a spectrum policy. We should not wait for WRC to happen and then decide. So in case of 5G, we have decided the spectrum, and as you know that we follow the process of consultation through TRAI, and that process has started. So India has taken the lead, and now at least we have the clear roadmap for 5G spectrum. Another work was the regulation. And the regulation means we know that for fiberization we have to dependent on right of way, even use of street furniture. So for that, lot of work will be required by the regulator, by the Department of Telecommunication. So you may be knowing that with the National Broadband Mission, we were working for the making available this right of way for broadband to all. And once we say broadband to all, that we know that hybridization is very much necessary along with the 4G or 5G mobile. So DOT as a government is conscious, and we are taking all the steps, including the skill development by our another institutions, NTI PRIT, and so many programs by institutions like BIF and COI, even the India Mobile Congress, such events. So our purpose was to bring some even good international events also, but we could not host WTSA. That was scheduled in 2020 due to a pandemic. But I am sure that we are going in line with our aim of making India an innovator of technology. And innovation, I think, I don't know whether Professor Kiran Kuchi has given his views or not. I was a part of, because I just joined late. But at WTO, we have been able to get our 5G technology as one of the 5G candidate technology. So now it is for the world to accept it, and we have to work together in bringing this technology. And there has to be a lot of contribution from India to the global standards, because we don't want to be isolated. We want to be part of a larger ecosystem. So we are ready to work with the other global players in bringing this technology. As far as opportunity to Indian players is concerned, or even a startup is concerned. So we feel that since 5G is coming in entire world same time, more or less, so there is a lot of opportunity for us, our startups, our MSME, to contribute not only the product, but an application development. Even there is no application layer standard. So it means how to have a application layer standard itself. So you just plug and play your applications. So there is a need to work on application layer standard also, use cases also under the
I think Mr. Pathak seems to have dropped. Yeah. Okay. Till the time Mr. Pathak.
yeah.
Are you there, sir?
Mr. Pathak, sir, your connection is, I think, hanging. If you could put off your video, perhaps you might be connected.
I think.
You're back, sir. Yes.
Yeah, I'm saying that it's over to you now.
Okay, Mr. Pathak, I'm sure that you are going to be there in this call. We still have two important aspects of questions there, and I'm sure once we conclude those, we want to hear from you, for the valedictory session. Let me come back to two very, very important topics which we remain, in the discussion which we were currently doing. These questions basically then relate to, both the devices and the spectrum. We are aware that the experience that a consumer gets in a digital world depends upon networks as well as the devices. And devices are getting critical in terms of user experience also. Devices have to be available at different price points, have to be technologically, smart, but they are also important. It's also important that they are available in all the spectrum bands, which are there. So, Vinod, let me ask you this. How does the capabilities of 5G handset impact on user experience? And how should the 5G smartphones and network operators work to ensure alignment on the network and device capabilities?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, so Rahul, I think if you look at it right now, everybody agrees that there is no killer application, right, for 5G. The question largely is, what kind of a deployment are we going to look at? I mean, are we going to look at a largely low band type deployment? Is it going to be a combination of, let's say, some amount of mid band? And then again, when it comes to millimeter wave, again, there are questions about, how far and what kind of scale in terms of distance it offers and what type of penetration options it has when it comes to, any objects in between and so on. So based on our observation, what we see is that there is a massive deployment going to be around the low band. I mean, the mid band is going to be there progressively deployed, but in pockets. And then, the millimeter wave is going to be specific to maybe specific to, let's say, a particular location, like, somebody is watching the football match in a stadium and so on and so forth. So the question here is, I mean, what kind of features am I looking at? For instance, Apple has released its latest iPhone, and you do not have millimeter wave support apart from the US, right? I mean, everywhere else it says either the mid-band and the other options that are available. Is that enough? I think definitely that is enough for eMBB and faster broadband that you need. Again, there is the debate about, how much benefit am I going to really get? I mean, is it going to be tremendously faster than 4G, or is it going to be just slightly more beneficial than that? So I think the point being here is this again brings back the question about, fiberization and other things and other aspects. But what are we seeing in other markets around the collaboration between the operators and the community, as in the vendor community, right? The makers of the handphones. There are some managed services that we see from some operators where actually you have the ability for, let's say, the OEM themselves to package some sort of a software. You call it an agent or some sort of a layer of software that gets embedded within the handphone. And now what the operator is able to do is actually use AI capabilities in the network to actually optimize the behavior of the end user equipment, the UE, the hand phone. The good thing about it is that, let's say, you're actually on the move, and then potentially using AI, the operator is able to identify your location and then basically say, there is a prospect of you actually moving through a terrain or through a period where there is not going to be adequate connectivity for a few seconds, and then you start buffering up more data, you buffer up more video to actually help that little bit of challenging time that you're actually going through. Now, these are some possibilities that you could actually embed into your 5G ecosystem. Now, that requires collaboration, that requires specific testing with the handset manufacturer as to how this is working in different environments, specific to a particular band, and so on and so forth. But those are options that we are kind of currently seeing. The other major application, definitely for at least the young audience, is going to be gaming and anything around AR and VR. AR, VR yet a little far away, but cloud gaming is going to be something really big. What that really means is that we don't need to wait for 5G here. We need to really start building out and scaling out our infrastructure at the edge, right? We need to build the content. We need to provide the CDNs. We need to provide the AI capabilities to optimize the way content is delivered. And I think that could be a beginning as well, where you start, kind of extending the capabilities of 5G and really gaining interest based on the current ecosystem. Because I mean, it's like, giving the user the ability to taste what could be delivered by these emerging technologies like edge computing or mobile edge computing. And then gradually you would see that there are other ways through AI to actually deliver a much more better customer experience or consumer experience as well. So I think this is how we would see the trend progressing.
Thank you, Vinod, as insightful as the last time. Okay, so let me now come to the concluding question in this debate. We all know spectrum is the oxygen for 5G networks, and sufficient amount of spectrum across low, mid, and high bands is required to give a truly true experience to the customer. There are already many new candidate bands emerging. However, the C band and the millimeter wave band holds the biggest promise as of now, and many countries have already started assigning this spectrum for IMT and 5G purposes. So let me ask you this, Amit. What would be the minimum requirement of spectrum we see in the C band and millimeter wave band for a meaningful experience on 5G, both for mobility and fixed wireless services? Also, any indication based on Nokia's presence throughout the world, how would the spectrum cost play a role in adoption of 5G services in India?
Yeah, thank you, Rahul. The most controversial question you posted last to me. So, but let me take a shot at it.
They save the best for the last.
But anyhow, so the first part of the question is very simple, and the answer is very simple. So if you look at less than 6 gigahertz spectrum, yes, you can do starting from 5 gigahertz to 100 gigahertz. You can do in multiples of 5 deployment of 5G. And in the millimeter wave, in slots of 50 megahertz, you can go up to 400, even 800 megahertz if you want to do it. But the recommendation and the way that world is adopting 5G, 100 megahertz in the 3.5 and 400 megahertz in the millimeter wave is the recommended spectrum. Yes, because of scarce of spectrum or maybe sufficient not available for XYZ reason and XYZ operators or number of operators, that 100 can be 90 or 80, but less than that really will not give the benefit of 5G. So that's the simple part of the question. The other question is, which is the controversial part, is what should be the cost of the spectrum, or how does the cost of the spectrum lead to or play a role in adaptation? So it's I'll give you 2 examples. Number one, we've had the story of 2G. We've seen 900 spectrum. We've had the story where there used to be 13 operators and the spectrum was fragmented. We have seen almost the same thing happening in 4G in India, where spectrum was distributed. In fact, yesterday in the inaugural panel, all the 3 CTOs agreed that we are still in India not getting the speeds on 4G network, which are at par with the world. Why? Because the spectrum is either fragmented or not enough to be able to give that experience. So we should not repeat that mistake again. Sufficient spectrum needs to be with the operators, and sufficient spectrum with this bandwidth will be key for giving the experience of 5G that people in India deserve. So I'll give you the second analogy, which is, let's say, take the case of an airport. Now, if you give the land for the airport, you have 100 crores to make the airport. If the cost of the land of the airport is 50 crores and you have 50 crores to make the airport, so we'll end up making a runway. You will end up making check-in, check-out counters and a little bit of infrastructure, and you'll say run the airport. But if you give the land free, you have 100 crores to make the airport, you will make a state-of-the-art airport, which will not only have the facility to check-in, check-out and runway, but which will have kiosks for doing so many other things. You will have shopping, you will have food courts, you will have so many other things, which will try to create a digital value or economic value for that airport itself. So look at it exactly as the same expense, same example. If the cost of the spectrum is going to be large, the kitty is limited. We know the situation of India. We know the situation the operators are going through. The amount that they will be able to spend on the capex will remain restrictive. If the cost of the spectrum is lower, then that money will be more. They will be able to do many more things like building use cases, creating an ecosystem, spend that money on the state-of-the-art infrastructure, cover faster rural connectivity, to give ubiquitous 5G coverage so that people really get the advantage of 5G. So I think it's a simple thing, and I am glad that we read in the papers today that the matter has been now referred from DOT back to TRAI on the spectrum prices. We hope that there will be some good conclusion and consultation on the same. What is the right price? I don't have an answer, but if the lower the price is, the more opportunity will be to create the infrastructure for 5G. So it's a no-sum gain. So that's my
Thank you, Amit. Thank you, really giving the perspective. Both the airport example is really very apt, for spectrum. Some years ago, I traveled to China, and we were trying to compare what happened in India and China. And we were told that while in India we were spending 80% of money in acquiring spectrum and only 20% in building the network, in China it was the reverse. They were spending just 20% in acquiring spectrum and spending 80% on building networks. So I think that is learning which we have to remember. So all in all, a very interesting discussion. I want to thank each one of you. We got a very good perspective from Professor Kuchi, on the amount of efforts which are being done by, the bodies, including IIT Hyderabad, in enabling the 5G, and the testbed opportunities which are available to everybody. We have heard Kuntal talk extensively, about the ecosystem and what are the opportunities which lie, with the 5G going ahead. We heard Vinod talk about the opportunities on devices and how we can take the next steps for it. And of course, Girish gave a perspective on both FWA, part and how do we see the technologies, going ahead. Amit gave us a slice of both the UN Sustainable Goals and also talked about the need for having apt pricing for spectrum going ahead. So I think we had a very interesting discussion today. I would like to take this opportunity to thank each one of you, and I would now like Mr. Pathak, if you can, come back, sir, and give us deeper insight into how soon do we now traverse the journey for 5G, rollouts. Mr. Pathak.
Yeah, thank you. Am I audible or still not?
Fully audible.
So I think I have already shared, but I think it's valedictory session. So someone from BIF should explain what happened in these 2 days. Otherwise, as I shared my experience that, in fact, I have a big dream always I had, I think, for 5G. And I wanted that at least in 5G, we should be at par with the world, but nevertheless, I think we are delayed by just 2 years. And still, I think that a lot of work one has to do on the application part. So since we have our strength in startups, so I feel that from India, we take the lead for development of applications and use case relevant for not only India, but for the world also, so that we can, I think, go global. That's the time. And from 5G to 6G or any other next generation, since that will be all Internet of Things. So we have a lot to contribute from India. So this is a right time for our Indian startup, MSME, Indian players, even operators to diversify and have a new one can say methods how to reduce the cost. But because for other countries it may not be relevant, but for India, as you told, that how to make affordable handsets available, devices available. And we have seen in this pandemic that that's very much important, that how to minimize the cost for the connecting billion is already connected, but I think reliable connectivity and providing them all the services at the low cost. So we have a lot role, and I think as we know that very soon we'll be knowing the spectrum bands and what will be the price recommended by TRAI or decided by the government. So I'm sure that we'll also have our 5G very soon. So this is what I have from my side. So if someone from BIF says it's okay, otherwise I would like to thank BIF, Bharat Exhibition, all our friends in the distinguished panel itself, and even those who has given their views for the past, yesterday also. So I know them all personally. So I would like to extend all the very thanks and congratulations that at least we are moving, we have started moving in the 5G, because I think 1.4 billion was missing this. So we have started the trials, and I'm sure that we have that experience, actual real 5G experience. So thank you all from my side. Now back to you, Rahul.
Thank you, Mr. Pathak. Before Arun steps in, let me say that I remember sitting with you, more than 5 to 6 years ago, where you had first shared your thoughts that we should take the lead on 5G, and a lot of discussions, around that. And the way you have focused and tried to, work on this is really, really commendable. It is not easy, sir, to aim for something and then try to move towards it. But we assure you that the entire ecosystem is now getting ready. And I'm sure, next year we are going to see, things really moving around. But whenever you look back, you will realize the role you have played. We all know what role you have played in getting 5G, up and, ready for this. A lot of hard work, a lot of efforts, and knowing, what a monumental effort this is. I really want to thank you, from industry's side for this effort. Back to you, Arun.
He's a one-stop shop for in DOT for all of us, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Rahul, for chairing an excellent session. And I thank all the panelists. Sir, Mr. R.K. Pathak, thank you so much for your wise words, as always. You took the words out of my mouth. I was going to remind you about 2018 in the first use cases, where you had guided us very nicely in that session that year, when Minister Saab and Secretary Ma'am had come also, and you had coordinated everything. So that was very nicely done, sir. And you always guided us for the event. It's thank you so much for that. So I thank all the panelists for all your inputs. I think this is not just the valedictory session, but the whole session, event has been, I think, in a very positive note. The government has come out with some very good reforms, and we look forward to next year being even better, more reforms coming up. So on behalf of Bharat Exhibitions and Broadband India Forum, I thank all the valued participants. Especially our thanks to Mavenir, Nokia India, VMware, Keysight Technologies, Capgemini Engineering, VIAS 3D, IIT Hyderabad, and Andritsu for their support of the event. I give special thanks once again to Shri A.K. Tiwari, Member T, Department of Telecom, for taking time out of his busy schedule to grace the event as the chief guest yesterday in the inaugural session. We should also like to give thanks specially to the Cellular Operators Association of India, and in particular General Kocher, Director General COAI, for their active support and participation. I must also make particular mention of the operators, Bharti Airtel, Reliance Jio, and Vodafone India, who have participated with their most valuable contributions, and we look forward to a great future with the 5G world through their sterling efforts. We've seen through the pandemic how we've all been connected in very trying times with a strained network. And I think they've done a fantastic job to keep us all connected. And I think we will see a better future with the reforms coming up. Big thanks to Mr. T.V. Ramachandran, President, Broadband India Forum, for his inimitable guidance and the professionalism of Mr. Shashidharan, MD of Bharat Exhibitions, for a very, very well organized conference. And I thank the teams from both BIF and BE for all their efforts to make the event a success, especially all the valued guests and delegates who have taken time out and from their work schedules and spent, I believe we've still got some 450 attendees currently. So it's we've had at the best time about 750 attendees. It is very well attended. We're very happy to say that. All I can say is, with the new reforms coming up and further reforms being looked at, look out. So next year, we look for more positive outputs, especially with the guidance of people like Mr. R.K. Pathak and our Honorable Prime Minister, who's coming up very aggressively and progressively with new ideas and policies. Thank you all so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Arun. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.